And AI and how it's used and why it's used is one of those very, very big issues. It touches our lives every single day, maybe every single hour. Every single person in this room has some connection with an AI tool, or something's being driven or contributed to by a large language model, a learning model. So I think that we're very, very, very well supported on this topic by our two speakers. We have Carme Artigas, who is co-chair at the UN AI high-level advisory body. That's really high. And she, of course, was very involved with the new EU legislation, which we'll be talking about a bit later, because that's the first legislation in the world that's specifically addressing AI. And next to her is Christina Montgomery, who is Vice President and Chief Privacy and Trust Officer for IBM. And AI is a particularly important part of her purview. So I'm delighted to be joined by two such renowned experts in their field. And I really feel sorry for those people down there, because Irene's going to get them. So stop talking now before she gets there. I just want to kick off with some comments from both of our speakers before we move into Q&A, because they both have particular experience and particular expertise. And I just wanted to go to Christina before I go to Carme. So would you like to talk a little bit about you, IBM, life, death, the universe, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday's stage setting panel, you heard about the potential innovation that can be unleashed with AI, how beneficial it could be. But importantly, in order for that to happen, we have to trust it. Everyone has to trust it as a society. And that's essentially what I do at IBM, right? That's my role, to build trust into the technologies that we're deploying. We're an enterprise technology company, not a consumer-facing. So, for example, you know, the world's biggest banks use IBM technology to make sure that, you know, you can access your account and your money when you need it. We support the airlines, right? So you can make reservations or change your flights online like that. I checked into mine this morning using an app, right? Important stuff that we want to work well. But we also know that, again, trust is underpinning all of those things. So it's a business value for us, but it's also really important for society, and we're a technology company that's been operating over 100 years, leading with trust and responsibility. So one of the roles that I have, in addition to being the Chief Privacy Officer at IBM, we also heard yesterday about how important data protection and data privacy is to AI. I also co-chair our AI Ethics Board. And for this group, our AI Ethics Board is co-chaired by two women, me and our global AI Ethics leader in IBM, who is in research. And one of the members, I'm not sure if she's here now, but we have an amazing table of IBM women represented at this conference. And one of them spoke yesterday. And she's on my board, Kitty Cheney-Reed. She's our Chief Leadership, Culture, and Inclusion Officer. She's on the AI Ethics Board, so it's very cross-disciplinary in nature. And the role of the board has been essentially to build the principles of trust and transparency that underpin everything we do at IBM into our practices and hold ourselves accountable as a company to those principles. So it's one thing to have a set of principles, and you'll think of them as, from our perspective, it's that AI has to augment, not replace human intelligence, that it should be transparent and explainable and privacy preserving, all of those things. And for us, as an enterprise company, we're not training our AI on our client data. The data and the insights from AI belong to our clients. So those are our principles, but we needed to hold ourselves accountable to those. So that's what the board does, essentially, and the governance mechanisms we have around AI. And when you think about AI regulation and the need for society to build guardrails, we've been calling for regulation for AI for 4 years. We put out our first point of view that we should regulate the use of AI. We need to regulate it in context, not the technology itself. We put that out, risk-based regulation, precision regulation, in 2020. And what that's led to over time, we've been very active in those conversations. And we see now the EU AI Act, the first comprehensive regulation of AI that is taking that approach. It's regulating high-risk uses. It's applying more restrictions to, and more requirements, I should say, to high-risk uses of AI, and allowing innovation to flourish in lower-risk uses of AI. So supportive of essentially the principles that we've been articulating for, which require accountability, right? There needs to be guardrails. And as we look at the global world alignment, because there's conversations on regulation happening all over the world, we absolutely think that there needs to be global alignment around certain things, like where and how we're going to use this technology in the first place, what guardrails we're going to apply to the technology, and then importantly, what we mean by those guardrails. So when we call for things like data transparency or transparency of models, consistency around what that means from a global perspective, I think is really important. So that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Great, thank you very much, Christina. Can you tell us a bit about the origin of the legislation, what you think the most important parts of it are for the people in this room, and is it the North Star for other countries and their move toward protection?
First of all, of course, let me say hello to everyone. I just managed to be here even the last day. Thank you, Irene, for making it happen at the host committee. I hope you have enjoyed all your stay in Madrid. And I can tell you that the view from here is so impressive. It's really girl and women power. That's amazing. I'm glad to be here on the stage. So yes, you have touched a very important point. Yeah, good. I think very important. Why is it so that we are so concerned about artificial intelligence now? That's the first question. It's been going on for many years. It started in the 50s, then we had like the long winter in the 80s, and it was like starting with things we called about machine learning, deep learning, and all of a sudden that was a conversation only about the geeks. But all of a sudden that's come to the public opinion. And that was because in October 2022, there was an eureka moment that was the launch of ChatGPT. And at that precise moment, everybody realized that AI was not something from the future, it was present. It was absolutely pervasive. It was affecting all aspects of our production model, economic model, but also from our society. And we started to have different relations with technology. And we also realized that it was able for the first time to replace the human being in many aspects. So AI is not yet another technology. It has unique features that requires us to see it from a different perspective, in the different way we have seen technology until now. It's not only affecting the production model and economy, it's also affecting our relation as human beings and even our democratic values when we see the influence of deep fakes and misinformation, for example, in democratic processes. This year, 60 countries in the world, 35% of the GDP and almost 50% of the population in the world are going on elections. Imagine the impact of this. So that was a very pivotal moment because until now, nobody was paying any attention. And I can tell you this from heart. I was a Spain Minister of Digitalization and AI, and December 2020, we were the first country in the world launching our Charter for Digital Rights. And those Charter for Digital Rights were already including things like the right not to be discriminated by an algorithm, the right for a second human opinion when an automated decision is preventing you access to a certain credit line or a certain medical treatment. And those were discussions we were having in Spain and nobody else was having. Then in June 2021, the European Union had the first version of the European AI Act. And I can tell we felt very lonely. Nobody else was paying attention. I would say, apart from companies that were taking care about the ethics on the developments at the global level, not America, not Asia, they were thinking, oh, here come the hyper-regulators from Europe. We're going to be more innovative. We're going to let technology do what they want. But because of the momentum of ChatGPT, everybody realized that was a very powerful tool, that even the developers were not capable of preventing the misuse of that technology, and that something needed to be happened. So a lot of different initiatives took place. First of all, the industry took responsibility with ethical guidelines. Of course, industry didn't like to be regulated, but if I ask a bank, would you like to be regulated? They will say no. If I ask a pharmaceutical company, do you like to be regulated? They will say no, but we must regulate it because the impact is huge. But then, remember that at the very beginning, the discussion was about fairness, ethical fairness. How do we ensure that algorithms do not discriminate us? How do we ask for explainability of algorithms? But all of a sudden, the discussion has moved from AI fairness to AI security. And we have all of a sudden start talking about existential risk for humanity, AI risk for frontier AI. And that sometimes is, I would say, shadowing the conversation on fairness and ethics. The AI regulation from Europe is the first regulation in the world that is affecting 27 countries, so it's international. It's regulating the high-risk use cases of technology, but takes care not only on the safety risks, on the health risks, but very important, on the fundamental risks on what we say areas of domain which have risk, which is education, the job place, the use of AI by governments. So we're not only looking for the long-term impact of technology, we're seeing also the problems that we have today for our democratic values. I would just mention that probably the unique feature of this legislation, which makes it totally different to any other initiative in the world, because then we have executive order by Biden, the G7 recommendations on generative AI, the ethical guidelines of UNESCO, is what we call the Chapter 5. Chapter 5 says the prohibited uses of AI. So the first time ever we're telling the world, even though it's technically feasible, we don't want AI to do this in Europe. We don't want AI to be used for social scoring. We don't want AI to be used for massive surveillance of governments. We don't want AI to discriminate people based on biometric data, facial recognition, or even we don't want AI to affect our own will. We don't want to be augmentative. We don't want to. And this is why I think the importance of this law is that it's not only a legal standard or a technical standard, it's a moral standard.
Thank you very much for that. Impassioned plea. But what about other jurisdictions? I mean, that this is now this poster child for legislation, but it's only as good as the surrounding legislation from other countries that you trade with, you work with. I mean, we've got superhighways everywhere, so we have to look at this as a global development. Where is the US on this?
So I think it's critically important, and obviously as a company we operate in 170 countries around the world, so the last thing we want is to have a fractured approach to any regulation, and particularly something that is touching everything that we do as a company and everything that our clients are interested in, right? So we have been pushing for as much interoperability as possible within these regulations. Now, that being said, the EU has a very different legislative framework, and they're regulating from a comprehensive law. In the US, however, we have an executive order, probably the largest, it is the longest executive order ever enacted by the White House. And it very much is aligned, though, in terms of the EU approach. It is focused on higher requirements, impact assessments and the like, for safety impacting and rights impacting AI. It's being driven because of the nature of how the government works there. Because it's an executive order, it's addressing government use. But when you think about it, the government is the largest buyer in the United States. So that's going to impact the products and the solutions that any company is developing that wants to sell to the government. It will influence those practices. So I think really important, that's the US, other countries like Singapore have voluntary frameworks, but aligned around many of the same principles. I think it is important from a moral perspective because we have the opportunity to do that now, to make decisions as societies about what we're going to use the technology for and what we're not going to use it for. I testified in front of the US Congress a year ago and called for just that. We need to be declaring some uses of artificial intelligence that we as a society will not do. We've done it as a company. We should be doing it as a society, and we should be doing it in alignment with the EU and others. And we're seeing those conversations happen. We're seeing them happen in safety institutes that the US formed, the UK, there's one coming in the EU as well. We see it happening in global conversations and trade conversations like the TTC between the US and the EU. So I'm hoping that we'll see more of that now that the world has, now that everybody's paying attention to this. And as Carmen said, they weren't really until 2022, the end of 2022. And I can say that because I tried to get them to pay attention for years prior to that. And then all of a sudden, everybody woke up because we saw ChatGPT and what AI was capable of. And what it wasn't capable of, too. I think that's really important to remember. Like, this is a tool, and it does have hallucinations. It does not replace humans. It could look like it is, but it's not. So I think it's important that we all understand what AI is capable of and what it is not capable of, where its shortcomings are.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. So if you put rubbish in, you're going to get rubbish out. So the information, the content that is being fed into these LLMs is super, super important. And we all know a lot about fake news. We all know a lot about fake images. We're worried about what that could mean, destroying your reputation, destroying your company. So there's a whole new universe of anxiety-inducing things for us to worry about. But that's why these kinds of legislation, and also there's a Professor Olga Gil here in Spain looking at dashboards of trust. I mean, you're working with the Pulitzer, aren't you, in New York?
Yeah. So journalists have a critical role to play in this, right? In trust, in helping us as a society understand what's true and what isn't true. Absolutely, journalism is at the front lines in helping us to make sure that what you see you can trust, right? And so we have a tech ethics lab with a university in the United States, the University of Notre Dame. It's a first of its kind lab that's solely focused on applied research in technology ethics. So we're working with the Pulitzer Institute to train journalists on how to understand this technology and report on it so that people can understand it.
Yeah, to report on it as well as use it. Karma.
Yes, you have struck a very, very important issue, which is trust. This is why I think it is important that we have a legal framework that people can trust. So because a legal framework is certainty to consumers, that they are using products that have been proven, that have passed a quality test. And we must remember that for some reason, we have never treated the software industry as we have treated the rest of the industries. The software industry has been the spoiled child. We have not asked them for quality controls. We were the quality controls. Every time we discovered the bug in the system, we were reporting the software company. They were selling the new upgraded version. We paid twice. And that was like a deal with the consumer because the level of innovation the software industry has had was beneficial for both. But now it's not that anymore. Imagine launching a car without brakes or without airbag. That's what the software industry has done in the first early stages of ChatGPT. So it's important that we understand that when we create a legislation, we give trust to the consumer and we give trust to the citizens. And when we're talking about the existential risk of AI, it's not that like an Armageddon-like robot powered by AI is going to enter here and kill us all. Really, the existential risk is that we all became insane. Because we cannot believe what we see, we cannot believe what we read, we cannot believe what we listen to. And the sentence, seeing is believing, is no longer true. So that is the importance of the media. It's important of giving certainty. In the EU legislation, by law, you're obliged to label if something has been generated by AI. Probably I don't care. Probably I'd like to have a newspaper which is 100% automated and fit for use for me, but I must know. And that's a very important, an important issue, especially fake news. They do not try to sell a lie for a true. They try to make us believe in nothing. Believe in nothing. And that's what is absolutely disruptive of the moment we're living.
Yeah, I agree. So One of the things that I think our audience is very interested in is what AI is going to mean for their livelihood, for their jobs, but more importantly probably, what it means for their children's jobs. What kind of education should our children be embarking upon to work constructively in partnership with AI? I mean, what should they be studying? Should we all become engineers? I'm not sure that's the best way for the world to go. But these are the really living and present issues that I think a lot of people in the room are thinking about. I mean, what did you study?
So my background is in law, and I was an English major. So, I've been a technology lawyer for a number of years, but I don't have a technology background. And I think the important thing is, first of all, these technologies, AI is being used in every industry and in many, many different domains. And when you think about how to ensure that it is safe, as we talked about, right, that it is not biased, that you can understand what the algorithm is doing, that it's explainable and the like. You need to understand that in context. It plays out very differently in different contexts. So the same piece of technology, and that's one of the benefits of large language models or foundation models. You can take a model and you can tune it for use in many downstream applications. So the same technology can underpin a chatbot in a customer service application, but it can also underpin something that is helping to drive and influence decisions in hiring or in banking and the like. So you have to understand how that technology is being used in context. So I think the most important thing to understand about the future of technology is that we need, as a society, many different disciplines and many different backgrounds coming to the table to help us figure out what guardrails should be appropriate, what uses of technology should be appropriate, and how you place controls where appropriate on different uses of AI so you can understand them. From a board perspective, my board is very cross-disciplinary in nature, and everyone comes with a different perspective because there'll be researchers, there'll be data scientists, there'll be lawyers, there'll be communications professionals, HR professionals. So everybody's looking at this from a different perspective, and that's what makes the conversations rich and helps us inform better decisions.
Thank you. And Karma, what do you think?
I want to highlight that together with the risks, there are huge opportunities. And the amount of opportunities, otherwise not so many people will not be putting so much money in it if there were not opportunities. So I see the opportunities on, for example, accessing public health, especially to the global south. For example, in India, there is absolutely lack of ophthalmologists, and a lot of people become blind just with cataracts, something which is easy to get out in the first world. So there are some a lack of attention, especially in the medical sector, that we can recover with AI. Also, access to education. Imagine that every single kid in the world would have a personal tutor telling him in the way he's able to understand it. So that are absolutely positive impacts of this technology. I see a lot of interest in applying AI for sustainable development goals, that we use the technology to solve the climate change, even to solve poverty, to make crops more efficient. And a special area of very important advances is research, especially medical research with AlphaFold that has discovered how proteins unfold, and that since it's been crucial for pharmaceutical industry for repurposing of drugs and also for discovering new materials. So there's a huge amount of advances. We're going to see in the following 5 years huge advances as we have not seen in the last 2 centuries. But at the same time, for the first time ever, this technology makes us think what it means to be a human. Because until now, how did we define what a human being was? The smartest species in the known Earth or planet, the smartest one. We are not the smartest anymore. We are not the smartest anymore. Second, the rational animal. Rationality is not what we're going to make us human. Rational decisions are going to be made by an algorithm. We are going to take the decisions which are not rational, but are based on our emotions, our compassion. Compassion is a unique feature of human being because compassion is not an utilitarian way of intelligence. So artificial intelligence is only a way to do utilitarian things in a much efficient way. But the human being does a lot of things that are not utilitarian. We dream, we imagine possible futures, and that's not something that AI is doing today. I cannot say never, but so far today. And this is why we need to teach our children those things that make us human. So emotional intelligence, empathy, collaboration. And that is something that traditionally, at least in the school in Spain, you have never been taught anything like this. And I think every single dollar that we invest in AI, we should invest $1 in human consciousness. Because we are always saying, what happens if everything goes wrong? But the right question is, what happens if everything goes right? If everything goes right, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to find a purpose in our life? If somebody will work for us, remember when we expected the robots to do our cleaning, our ironing, and also, getting the garbage out of the house so we could paint and write songs and write poems? Oh, when did this go south? That the AI is writing poems, writing music, writing pictures, and we're still on ironing? Something went south. I don't know when, but that was not the idea.
Unfortunately, I think maybe that means more men were developing that technology. No, it's absolutely true. So really, both of you are suggesting that generalists would thrive in an AI-dominated world, where workplace, people who can have critical thinking, people who are able to make assessments about the future based on the past, but emotional intelligence. So these are many, many courses that I think our children have got.
Disruptive innovation.
Yes.
So AI does something very well, much better than the human beings, which is processing a lot of data in a minimum amount of time. Also does very good thinking in context, and also defining patterns. But if you go to, for example, Instagram or TikTok, and you search for a handbag, all of a sudden they propose you 200 handbags that are exactly the same. They will never propose you anything different that you have not seen before. So the innovation on the creation side of generative AI is only incremental innovation. It's not disruptive innovation. AI cannot think out of the box. AI cannot think, they cannot have abstracted thinking, because abstraction requires thinking out of the context. And they know very well the data they have, but they cannot identify the data they miss. So the what-if scenarios is what still is a human capability.
Exactly. Thank you very much.